Hi, so in this unit we are going to be talking about the legislative branch. Now these are the people who are going to be making laws. Whenever we're talking about making laws, these are the laws that not only govern our federal government, but also our state and our local. So we're going to have national, state, and local. Now each one of these levels of government, because that's what we're looking at here, is that we have the top level. So when we say federal or national, we're going to use those words interchangeably. You have federal and national, and then you have state, and then you have local. And each one of them has a group that makes laws for a particular area. So at the national level, it's the U.S. Congress. They make laws that govern the whole country. So things like immigration or taxes are going to be things that the U.S. Congress handles. They're going to make laws about that, and they're going to cover the whole country. Now, in the state of North Carolina, we have the North Carolina General Assembly, and they make laws that govern the state of North Carolina. So, for example, laws that deal with, laws that deal with taxes just for the state of North Carolina, or laws that are in regards to like a hurricane that's going to hit North Carolina. And we also have other things like in the state of North Carolina when you can drive and then that kind of stuff. And then local laws are going to be handled by things like the county is going to be called the Pitt County Board of Commissioners. So they are going to govern the whole county. And so if there's a noise ordinance for the whole county, the Pitt County Board of Commissioners would be the people that come up with it. Now, there's also ones that govern cities as well. So like the Greenville City Council, they would govern make sure that inside the city limits, you are not allowed, like teenagers are not allowed to drive after 9 o'clock. So that the laws get more and more specific. Whereas up here, they're going to be pretty broad laws and different places can interpret them as they need to. These are going to be specific for the state, and then county, and then city. And it can even get even more specific if we go to smaller like special districts and stuff. So we're going to talk about this U.S. Congress first. And so that brings us over to federalism. Now, federalism is the idea that we're going to share powers. So now make sure on your notes that you put this in the right spot because some of these are not quite the same. So on the national side, let's do those first. These are powers that the U.S. Congress has. These are called express powers. Sometimes they'll even call them enumerated powers. And these are things that are written expressly in the U.S. Constitution. They make federal laws. They can regulate the post office and the military. They coin. If you coin, that means it's like to create. And so our U.S. Congress is responsible for creating our currency that we have in this country. Now if we move over to state, now in your notes, this is on the last column. These are called reserve powers, and this falls back to the 10th Amendment. And so the 10th Amendment would be reserve powers are things that state statutes. Now whenever we talk about statutes, all that means are state laws. So like school. So if you go to school in Virginia, you're not going to take civics and economics your sophomore year in high school. And it's because in Virginia, their laws, their policies dictate that they're going to take civics and economics their senior year. If you go to New York, you cannot get your driver's license until you're 18. And so that like marriage rules, driving rules, all of these are going to be things that are going to be left reserved to the states. Like if I'm going to get divorced in North Carolina, there's different rules than if I get divorced in, say, California. Local laws are called ordinances, and that's that word right there, ordinances. It just means local laws. So city curfews, taxes, so that if say you live in Pitt County, we pay a 2% tax, and so that goes with extra, so that if you live in a different county in the state, you might not pay as much as we do. However, in our county, we recently decided that we were going to redo a whole lot of roads. And so because we're going to redo roads, we voted and we said yes, we were going to raise taxes. Now, zoning is one of those things that has got, we need to really write the definition down for that. So make sure you pause the video and write down the definition if I go too quickly. Zoning is that different places in an area have different things that it can do. Do we want a chemical factory next to, say, a plant nursery? Or do we want a big factory next to a school? That kind of stuff. So let me show you this map right here. And in this map, if we zoom in right here, now this is just a random one. So the yellow, this is where people live. But people generally are going to live over here in this area. Now there are some other places. But then like this, let's see, I'm trying to find the one that says like light industrial park. So this right here is where you're going to have factories. And so they're going to keep all the factories together. You're going to keep your agriculture together so that your stuff from like stores, so general business. So here we've got business over here. And so like you're going to be able to have parking lot runoff and stuff. That stuff is going to be kept separately than what's going on over here. Trying to make it so that we can have productive areas right there and all cohesively together. Now what this does is it means that it's got to be pretty specific, because this is going to be broken down differently where you live. So this is not going to be something that the president is going to take care of, which is when federalism comes into play, because the president does not need to worry about zoning. Zoning is something that a local government is going to worry about. Now, this right here is not the White House. This is the Capitol building. In fact, I believe you have this diagram on your notes, so make sure that you label it. It's called the U.S. Capitol building. And it is a very, very big building. And on one side, we are going, this is where let me pause. This is where the U.S. Congress works. Now, Congress is bicameral, and we've already talked about what that means, but let's say it again, that bicameral means that we have two houses. Two houses meaning that on one side, we have the House of Representatives, and then on the other side, we have the U.S. Senate. Now, you've got different numbers of people and different qualifications. There's just different stuff all the way around. So let's we're going to have a little T-chart going on here. So the House of Representatives is based on population. The more people that you have in your state, the more representatives you're going to have in the U.S. House of Representatives. So like California has 53 House of Representative members. North Carolina has 13. Now what is the difference? California is our most populated state. More people live in California than anywhere else, so they have more members than we do. Now this number is capped at 435 total people that are going to work on this side of the Capitol building. Now, who leads the House of Representatives would be the Speaker of the House. And so the Speaker of the House is going to be the most powerful person in this whole building right here. The Speaker of the House, his name is Paul Ryan, and he is the one that he decides what you're going to talk about, when you're going to talk about it. Now, all of the U.S. House of Representatives are on a 2-year term. So every 2 years they have to go for election, which varies considerably from the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is on the right side of this picture. So if we look over here, here's our U.S. Senate side. Sorry. I always forget about this. Let me back up a second. All right, so House of Representatives, there are a lot of them, and they're going to represent the different districts. And so here we have their 13 different districts. Walter B. Jones lives in Farmville. So Walter B. Jones represent our area. Like Walter B. Jones gets the highway that runs between Farmville and Greenville. And he understands the ECU traffic and what it does. Our president does not get that. He's not going to understand what that's like because he doesn't live here. But Walter B. Jones is from Farmville, so he's going to understand it a lot better. So when we look at what district we're in, Pitt County is divided, although they're currently trying to fix that. So depending on which side of the city you live in, you could live in District 1 or you could live in District 3. Alright, so the U.S. Senate is based on equal representation. So if we think back and we review for a second, this is when we were talking about the Great Compromise and how this would be like the Virginia plan and this is going to be the New Jersey plan. And so this was their compromise that we were going to have a bicameral legislature. And so in the U.S. Senate, there are 100 total people. There are 2 per state. North Carolina has 2, South Carolina has 2, Florida has 2, Massachusetts has 2, Wisconsin has 2. Every single state has 2. Now, they are officially led by the vice president. However, the vice president only goes if he's going to break a tie. So the president pro tempore is your day-to-day leader. Now, your senators are there for 6 years. The idea is that these people would have seniority and they would be able to get a lot of things done in that time span. So if we're looking at the House floor plan, so there's 435 seats here. Now, they do not sit next to their friends. That's not what they're supposed to do. They're broken up into 3 different groups, and this is called, like, you've got 2014 on this side, 2016, and 2018. And so they're kind of like freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, if you want to think about it like that. So North Carolina, our 2 senators are Richard Burr, who's from Winston-Salem, and Tom Tillis, who is from Charlotte. Now, notice that neither one of these are really close to Greenville, but they're not supposed to necessarily represent just Greenville. These 2 are supposed to represent the entire state. So as long as they are from the state, then they're going to be good representatives for us, ideally. But there's some other qualifications that go into that as well. So let's look at this. Whenever we're talking about the House, Article 1 in the U.S. Constitution, this is an excerpt, and it says that no person who is not at least 25, they have not been a citizen of the United States for 7 years, and they have to live in the state, usually we even say the district, in order to represent the state. So let's break that up a little bit clearer for you. You have to be at least 25, you have to be a citizen for 7 years, and you have to live in your district. And if you want to belong to the 435 House of Representatives that we have. Now, what about the Senate, though? So if you want to be a U.S. Senator one day, you have to be at least 30 years old. You have to have been a 9-year citizen of the United States, and you have to have belonged to that state. So if we're going to pull that down, 30 years, a citizen for 9 years, and you must live in that state in order to represent the state. And so that's our U.S. Congress, but who's in control of it? Do you remember that guy's name that I said? So we've got different leaders on both sides. So in the House, our speaker, his name is Paul Ryan. And so if we were to zoom into this picture right here, we would see Paul Ryan. He's going to be standing up, and so he's going to be in charge of whatever these people are going to talk about. If Paul Ryan don't want to talk about it, he's not going to talk about it. So he's really, really important. Under him, people who have to report to him, you have the Republican floor leader and you have the Democratic floor leader. Each party gets to pick their leader. And then underneath them, you have these people named party whips. And so you have the Republican party whip, and you have the Democratic party whip. So how do these people get their jobs? Their colleagues in here, they pick them. Of who has seniority, and then they vote, and it's you kind of know who's going to do it because of who's been in charge the longest. This is called the chain of command, because if you want to get something to Paul Ryan, you don't just run up to Paul Ryan and say, hey, this is what we're doing, Paul. That's not how it works. First, you have to go through, depending on if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican, you have to go through your party whips. Your party whips will take it to your floor leaders, and your floor leaders will then take it to the Speaker of the House. Okay, so what about the Senate, though? They're a little bit more complicated. These are the easy ones. Over here on the Senate, we have our vice president. Now, that's not our current vice president. That's Joe Biden. But I've not updated this, so don't be too upset. Now, what they realized whenever they were making our Constitution is that the vice president had a very, very small role. And they said, let's just make him the official tiebreaker of the U.S. Senate. And that's all he does. So make sure you make a note of what his main responsibility is. He's waiting for the president to die, and if that doesn't, so every day his job is to go say, hey, you feeling okay? I'm just kind of joking on that one. Do whatever the president needs him to do, and if the Senate needs him to break a tie, then he's supposed to go to the Senate. Now, why would the Senate need a tiebreaker? How many people are in the Senate? Do you remember that? That's 100 people are in the Senate. So could there be a tie out of 100? Well, of course there can. However, he only goes if there's a tie. So maybe a couple times in 4 years. They really don't go all that often. So who is the everyday there then leader? That guy's name is the President pro tempore. And so we call him the PPT for short. And the President pro tempore is there every single day. However, he's that guy who nobody really listens to, even though he should have a lot of power. It's really going to come down to your floor leaders. And so you have Harry Reid and you have Mitch McConnell. And so these are going to be your two, the Republicans and Democrats, that you're going to end up seeing on the news. That these are the ones that are really crucial. What they think in the Senate really matters. And it's the same as with the House when it comes to, underneath them, you have your party whips. So again, this is your chain of command. At first, if you want to get something done, you've got to bring it to these people first, and then they're going to take it to them. And then nobody really thinks about these two guys right here. Now, this does come into play somewhere else, though. So whenever we're looking at who's in line for the president, so first and foremost, we have the president. That's going to be our very first person. And then after the president, so if the president ends up getting shot or killed, who comes next? And so this goes back to our 25th Amendment. We have the vice president. Then after the vice president, so what happens if the president and the vice president are both killed at the exact same moment? Then that's going to be Speaker of the House. Remember him? His name is Paul Ryan. And then, so what happens if the president, the vice president, and the Speaker of the House all die at the same time? Then that's going to be the president pro tempore. And then what happens if the president, vice president, Speaker of the House, and the president pro tempore all die at the same time? Then they start going through the Secretary of, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Defense, Attorney General. They start moving through all the secretaries and to make sure that there's always a contingency plan of what's going to happen if our country is at stake here and nobody's in charge. None of these people they're never in the same room at the same time. And that's really, really important. If you've ever seen that, there's a TV show that they were making, I think it was called like The Bunker or something, and it's where they send somebody and he's supposed to go sit somewhere out in like Utah or something away from everybody else. All right, that's it for today.